Hatem Bazian is a professor of Middle Eastern languages and cultures at the University of California, Berkeley. Professor, thank you for joining us. Look, I understand that everybody is looking for rays of hope. Everybody is agreeing that this is a good first step. But is it any more than that, considering the reports from the Israeli side is that the prisoners that they're going to release from their prisons are also going to be women and children? In other words, we haven't got anybody being released that either side, Hamas or Israel, may consider combatants in a long-standing feud.
Well, I do think that this agreement, this pause in the hostilities is very important for bringing both the humanitarian relief, but also indicate that the conditions that Israel have set in place are no longer tenable. If we consider that Israel said that all hostages have to be released before any type of pause, that there will not be any fuel or medicine or food supplies coming in without the release of the hostages. They also said that they will be eliminating Hamas in totality before any negotiations or discussions can take place. As we could see that the high ceiling that the Israeli government have put in place shows that they had to walk back some of those. More importantly, after 3 weeks of the land assault and the land campaign, in search of where the hostages are possibly at, did not bear fruits. So my view is that in the days that are coming, we might see a de-escalation that might take place. Again, this is a cautious view that I have, considering that the military operation is not going as the Israeli government have expected, and also the change in public opinion, both inside Israel in terms of the demand of the families, the change in the U.S. administration. I think President Biden standing in the U.S., especially among Democrats, has shown considerable decline. And as such, the United States itself no longer is able to stand with Israel without any questions being asked. And lastly, I would say that the global public opinion have really begun to isolate Israel as a state that is operating outside the norms of international law. So if there is a, you could say, a silver lining in this, that I would say we are closer to the end of the campaign rather than the beginning, assuming that all things stay standing where we are right now.
So are you saying that this is not necessarily a concession by Hamas? Because many people may be seeing the situation regarding the humanitarian disaster that's happening inside Gaza as becoming so untenable for Hamas because of the severity of Israel's airstrikes that Hamas has been forced almost to make this deal. Are you saying that actually the pressure might be more on the Israeli government and the Israeli war cabinet, that it's not getting what it wants and therefore it had to agree to this? I mean, that might be a little bit irrelevant. Hatem, I just want to explain one thing. That might be a little bit going into a detail of a detail, but it might it not, instructive for what happens in the coming weeks in terms of relative positions of those two sides?
Again, just taking from where the expressed goals of the Israeli government before they launched their attack, it seems that this agreement indicates a stepping back away from the expressed goals that the Israeli government put in place. And now, is Hamas feeling an internal pressure in the Gaza Strip? For sure there is internal pressure after 47 days of a major assault, massive numbers of people that have been displaced, or close to 13,000 dead. For sure there's a pressure, but I'm just looking at both sides as far as the expressed goals of the campaign that Israel have put forth. And it's indicated also there is somewhat of a split that we need to see, because the three religious Zionism cabinet members did not actually approve or voted against the plan. So we might see some cracks in there. And yesterday, if you remember, there was a meeting between Ben-Gvir and the families of the hostages where people actually who were meeting with him told him, instead of you speaking about killing the Arabs, maybe you should focus about saving the Jewish hostages. So there are some discussions inside Israel as far as this campaign and how much patience there is on the internal front, again, for Israel. That's how I see it in terms of where the positioning of both parties, Hamas on the one hand versus the Israeli government, which I think is step back from the high ceiling of demands that they put forth at the beginning of this period.
Hatem, in your first answer, you were kind of looking ahead to a possible conclusion, resolution to the fighting. How encouraged should we be when we look that far ahead that this deal has been done in terms of the negotiations happening in Qatar with the political leadership of Hamas, but the Al-Qassam brigades, the military wing of Hamas, being the ones that actually will do the releasing of the hostages? Because they don't always, those two sides, the political and military wings, see eye to eye. But here, they seem to be.
Yeah, I do think that Qatar, on the one hand, Egypt played a role, the United States played a role. I do think that the three countries, with also the political wing of Hamas being in the negotiations, I do think that they are trying to negotiate a landing or an end for this conflict and this war. Whether Israel itself internally is able to step back, that will also be determined by the United States position. I think I just listened to your report that Secretary of State Blinken will be coming to Israel next week. I do think that he will be holding some positions that might actually begin to wind down Israel's commitment to the execution of the war, and we might be seeing the tail end of it. Again, under the assumption all stands still, whether the northern front with Hezbollah will continue to escalate, that is still an answerable decision. And if there is a breakdown in the next 4 days, because we are assuming that the release of the hostages, the exchange, will take place without any disruption and that the process will unfold without any breakdown. If there's a breakdown, then we're back at the negotiating table again. But I do feel that regionally, and also the United States, do not want this to continue any further, and they are trying to find a way out. How that will materialize, I think we have to wait for the next few days to see how it's going to be done.
Hatem Bazian, we always appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed, Professor.
You're welcome.